This is my uncle's old truck, and he told me it was free and it ran when he parked it, and that sounded like a screaming deal to me. Here's the motor. It looks fine. I never tried to spin it over by hand. Lesson learned. Here it is looking all clapped out on the trailer. Springtime rolled around and all the moss was still there, and the interior looked the same. I busted out the pressure washer, and that was a nice, satisfying job to do. After I was done pressure washing lead paint and moss into the next zip code, the truck did look a lot better, and then it was time for me to disconnect electrical so I could somewhat pressure wash the motor. I covered up some semi-important stuff with old Fred Meyer bags. The driver's door is stuck shut because the front end used to be a cattle scratching post. Apparently the key to start the thing was lost, and therefore the truck just got parked in the middle of the field and sat for 30-something years probably. I still don't know if I even tried to spin this thing over by hand yet, but I pulled out the spark plugs and was getting ready to shoot some PB Blaster down the cylinders because that's just a common practice to do with an old motor that hasn't ran in forever. It just helps the pistons and cylinders go up and down. I shot the carburetor with some carburetor cleaner, pulled out the oil dipstick. It did not look like a Dairy Queen Blizzard, so therefore I left it. Here's a great lesson. Do not try to start it if you have not tried to spin it over by hand.
Alright, so I'm pretty sure I didn't put this together right because just a number of reasons. So now I'm gonna throw down a fat bead of hot glue, and this thing is now in there, and then I'll take the zip ties off obviously, and hopefully now the truck will start, or at least turn over. Dang, I'd say that's about worth 30 bucks an hour.
Alright, I finally have electricity. A light even came on, which I don't know why low oil is on because it's got oil. My turn signals kind of work, so now it's time to see if she even cranks up.
No luck whatsoever. I thought it was because this fan was hitting the radiator hose, which was kind of suspicious, or I was hoping that it was a bad battery connection or these terminals were bad, so I got new terminals. But this is kind of when I learned that the motor was seized. So I started actually getting a little smarter. I busted out the transmission fluid.
Alright, it's all back together. I'm gonna let the fluid sit overnight. And in the meantime, I'm gonna clean up because I got stuff strewn everywhere.
Alrighty, it's still froze or seized. I'm gonna bust out a breaker bar and see what I can do.
Alright, so I got all happy that I was like turning the motor just a little bit. I was like, oh, it's freeing up. No, turned out this piece of garbage socket is broken. So it's like just like skipping gears or whatever the heck's going on in the inside of this. So it was not the motor turning. I'm tired of cranking on this bolt and going clockwise and non-clockwise, and I'm going to change my wrench every time. So earlier I broke this wrench, or it might have been broken, so I just welded it, so no more changing it, and I can just keep it going back and forth. This wrench is a piece of junk. I'm not using this garbage no more. Alright, I'm done working on this for the day, so I'm going to let it sit here with all this leverage and some weight hanging on it, just so it's got something to maybe help it break free.
Here's a little update. This is my little work cave. I don't have jack stands, so I just dug underneath the truck. I dropped that little thing off, and now the starter gear, or whatever it's called, is now exposed for me to start reefing on with the pry bar.
At this point, the motor had very minimal amounts of movement, so I thought it was time for me to try Marvel Mystery because I had heard good things about it, and since this motor is a V, I was worried that PB Blaster was only touching the bottom of the piston and not really getting to the top. Therefore, I put lots of Marvel Mystery in and even overflowed it in some cylinders.
Here is basically all the updates. Yesterday, I threw in a little over 2 gallons of diesel, basically just everywhere into this engine. I pulled the valve covers off because I want to check, make sure none of the valves are stuck. I got a breaker bar. I didn't know if I said that yet. So since it sat overnight, I'm going to try the breaker bar. And so every time I've thwacked it with the starter, it's moved. But apparently, after watching some YouTube, that's really bad for the starter. So I do not recommend doing that. And I got a new theory that like my cylinders are just pure rust, because a lot of times with these engines, after sitting, they get stuck between, well, the cylinder and the piston basically get froze together in one section, and then the goal is to break through that section. And what I'm thinking is, since I have some movement and I've been able to move it over the days or weeks or however long it's been, but it hasn't completely broken free. What I'm worried about is the cylinders are just complete rust. So when the piston tries to go up, it keeps finding those really stuck spots. So if this is not free, I believe today the heads are coming off. Alright, so I'm ending this video here. I'm going to do a part 2, and it's going to be taking off the heads and stuff.